Hey guys, here we go. All right, so today, this is just one page of doing something to kind of prep you for the notes for next chapter 2. So for 2.1, I just want to prep you with this concept of this thing called difference quotients. Okay, so, what's a difference quotient? Well, it kind of is exactly what it sounds like. It's the difference, which means subtraction, and a quotient, which means divide, right? So we're going to be dividing two things that we are subtracting, right? So a difference quotient. So there's examples in each of these of what a difference quotient is. So like in question number 1, the difference quotient would be this part D here, where you're taking the difference of those two things on top, subtracting them, and then you're dividing it by H. So it's taking a difference on the top and then a quotient. For number 2, the difference quotient would be this part right here. Okay, very similar to the one in number 1. Down in number 3, here's the difference quotient there. You've got a difference on top and a difference on the bottom, and then you're dividing both, and it's kind of similar for this one. So there's variations on what a difference quotient is, but it's going to be really important in our next section to be able to apply and use that difference quotient to help us talk about thing called a derivative, okay? So we'll get there later, but for now I just want you to practice how would I figure out these difference quotients, okay? So let me go through it. So I'll just do I'll do example 1, you guys can work on 2 by yourself, and so on and so forth. So they give you a function here, f of x equals 2x plus 3. So what is f of 3? Well, that's easy, I just plug in a 3 for x, so that's just 6 plus 3, and my answer is 9. Easy, we know how to do that. Okay, so what would f of h be? Well, again, I would just plug in an h for x. So I get 2h plus 3, and that's it. They're just asking you to plug it in. Okay, so what would be f of the quantity x plus h? Now, this is the one everyone gets wrong. So I want to make sure you can do this. So that means you're going to take that whole quantity h plus, or x plus h, and you're going to plug that whole quantity in right here for x. Okay, so I'm going to have the 2 in front. Instead of the x, it's going to now be x plus h. I'm plugging the whole thing in there for x, and then plus 3. And I can work this one out. I get 2x plus 2h plus 3, and that's it. I stop there. Okay, I'm not going to go any further. Okay, so now what are they talking about when they say to take this difference quotient? F of x plus h. Well, that first part, f of x plus h, that's what I just did. So I'm literally going to take that whole thing, and that's going to be this first part right here. So that'll be 2x plus 2h plus 3. And then it's saying to minus, so I'm going to minus, off this whole second thing, which is f of x. Well, what was f of x? Well, it's just kind of like this, or f of x. Actually, sorry, my bad. Ignore that. Undo. It's not that. That was f of h, right? So Whit wants f of x, which would be this original up here, f of x. So it's this expression, 2x plus 3, but I'm subtracting off the whole thing, so I have to put parentheses. Oh, that's the part where people get lost as well. They forget these parentheses, and that really makes a difference. And the whole thing, as you can see, it's quotient, right? So it's divided by this whole thing divided by h. So that negative that we had there does have to distribute. So now I'll have 2x plus 2h plus 3 distribute your minus all over h. Now the cool thing when we do these difference quotients, why they're so important and why you are going to really kind of like them, is at the end, all kinds of things cancel and simplify. Isn't that cool? So now I'm just left with 2h over h. Oh my gosh, even more simplifies, which is just 2. So for some of them, they simplify nicer than others. Others are going to be a little more complicated, but it'll still have something at the end that does simplify and cancel out. Okay, so number 2, I want you to try on your own. Number 3, a little different, so I'm going to go through and do number 3 with you. Okay, so scroll down to number 3. All right, so we've got h of x equals 1 over x. What's h of 1/2? Well, I just plug that in for x, so that'd be 1 over 1/2, which just turns out to 2. H of a would just be 1 over a, right? I'm just plugging in an a here. So it's 1 over a. Okay, so now here's our difference quotient. H of x is just the original, 1 over x. H of a is what I just found here, which was 1 over a. At the bottom, x minus a. Okay, so this one doesn't simplify as nicely right away, but it is now a complex fraction, so I do need to now simplify that complex fraction. Okay, so depending on if you're using, remember method 1, method 2, I can kind of make this guy, I'll go over here where there's space, have a common denominator, right? So this would be a minus x over xa all over x minus a. This is like over 1, so I can flip it. Okay, so nothing cancels yet, right? So let's see what I have here. If I go across, I'll have a minus x over xa times x minus a. Now these two, a minus x and x minus a, those are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. If it was a plus x and x plus a, right, a plus x and x plus a, those would be the same and I could cancel. But they're not the same when it's subtraction. So what you have to do technically when it's subtraction is if you factor out a negative 1 from one of them. Factor out a negative 1. So from the top, if I take out a negative 1, I'd be left with negative a plus x. On the bottom, I would still have this all the same. And notice this is now the same as that, and they can cancel. Okay, they're just in a different order. This is the same as x minus a, right? And so those cancel. So now I'm left with negative 1 over x a. And that is my final answer. Okay, so it did simplify. Not as nice as that first example we saw, but it definitely simplified. So this would be our final simplified distance or difference quotient. Okay, so you guys go back and try number 4, as well as going back and finishing number 2. Check your answers, submit them, and then you'll see this in our new notes tomorrow. All right, good luck.